good morning, evening, or night, wherever you are. Welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Tuesday, 22nd April 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. China is actively navigating complex international trade dynamics and geopolitical tensions. China opposes trade deals orchestrated by the US that disadvantage China, warning countries that seeking tariff exemptions from the US by limiting trade with China will face countermeasures. China's Ministry of Commerce has repeatedly cautioned against appeasing the US with trade deals at China's expense, calling for countries to resist US trade coercion and stating that such actions cannot bring peace. Chinese leader Xi Jinping, during a meeting with Vietnam's Lam in Hanoi, warned against curbing trade with China to gain tariff reprieves from the US. These trade tensions, along with corrosive deflation, pose challenges to China's economy and threaten Chinese workers. China is fast-tracking a landmark law to bolster its vital private sector, aiming to restore business confidence amid mounting economic headwinds. This effort aims to encourage domestic economic growth and stability. China's geopolitical activities include naval warnings to the Philippines after a Philippine frigate allegedly entered Scarborough Shoal waters illegally, demanding they stop infringing on China's territory. China and Indonesia have agreed to enhance maritime security cooperation in the South China Sea, focusing on promoting safety and security, despite existing tensions in the region. China's top diplomat Wang Yi called on Indonesia to jointly oppose protectionism as the U.S. trade war deepens. These diplomatic efforts are aimed at strengthening regional ties and countering U.S. influence. China is also making strides in technological advancement and reducing reliance on foreign nations, particularly the U.S. CATL, a China-based electric vehicle battery maker, announced major advances in EV batteries that are cheaper, faster to recharge, perform better in cold, and offer greater driving range. Trade restrictions may hasten China's drive to make its satellite industry more competitive as it reduces dependence on US components. China is also weaning itself off US soybeans, focusing on self-sufficiency in agriculture. These advancements are crucial for China's long-term economic independence. Furthermore, China will sanction US Congress members and others who acted egregiously on Hong Kong amid the trade war between China and the US. China-Europe rail freight has experienced a decline since January, largely due to trade headwinds and policy changes in Russia, a major transit hub. Malaysia Airlines is reportedly in talks to acquire delivery slots vacated by Chinese airlines, prompted by trade tensions between the US and China. These shifts reflect the broader impact of geopolitical tensions on global trade and aviation. Turning to Iran will brief China on nuclear talks with the US after consultations with Russia, before the third round of discussions amidst accusations against Israel for undermining the talks. The consultations with China and Russia underscore Iran's efforts to maintain diplomatic balance in the ongoing negotiations. Japan is at the center of considerable activity, with Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang urging the nation to boost its power generation to meet the intense energy needs of artificial intelligence, capitalizing on Japan's strength in robotics and industrial manufacturing. Minimum age requirements for politicians remain comparatively high in Japan among major democracies. The country is also dealing with hay fever, which is seen as a significant drag on productivity. Global funds have poured money into Japanese long-term debt, with net purchases reaching $82.8 trillion. On the defense front, Japan and Indonesia are in discussions about frigates to enhance defense industrial ties. Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba made a ritual offering to Yasukuni Shrine in Tokyo, a site of controversy due to its links to Japan's history. The nation is also debating the intersection of pacifist sentiments and nuclear deterrence, particularly questioning the consistency of opposing atomic weapons while also believing they deter conflict. School anxiety, depression, and family issues are major factors in the problems faced by society. Indonesia is committed to a non-alignment policy, which means it does not want to take sides between China and the United States, as evidenced by ongoing defense industrial cooperation talks with Japan about frigate. South Korea's National Agricultural Cooperative Federation's Japan office imported and sold 2 tons of Korean rice this month. In legal news, Kasumi Nawata, 35, was convicted of attempted coercion and given a suspended sentence of 6 months imprisonment for 2 years. United States. President Donald Trump continues to support Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, despite allegations that Hegseth shared sensitive information about planned strikes in Yemen through a private signal group chat. In Arizona, Border Patrol agents in Nogales wrongfully detained Jose Hermosillo, a 19-year-old U.S. citizen from New Mexico, for almost 10 days, citing allegedly improper immigration documents. Australia, animal welfare. Advocates and lawyers are urging the Australian government to protect veterinarian whistleblowers who expose animal welfare violations within export abattoirs. These veterinarians monitor animal welfare and food safety standards for countries including the US and EU, making their roles crucial for international trade. Mykola Bykuk, a 45-year-old Ukrainian-born Melbourne bishop, is now Australia's highest-ranking Catholic official and will be eligible to participate in the papal conclave after Pope Francis' death. Ireland. The Freemasons of Ireland apologised for allowing an interview between Conor McGregor and Tucker Carlson to take place at their Dublin hall. Grand Secretary Philip Daly announced that the rental fee collected for the event would be donated to charity. United Kingdom. The UK is struggling to keep cancer experts, with political rhetoric about immigration, high visa costs, and Brexit all playing a role. Experts may not want to move to or stay in the UK because of these issues. This could hurt clinical trials and research for NHS patients. NatWest is getting ready for its last yearly shareholder meeting before it becomes fully private. The UK government plans to sell its remaining shares in the bank soon. In Scotland, ministers are being criticised for not providing enough abortion care for women who need it later in their pregnancies. These women have to travel to England because Scotland's 14 health boards do not offer abortion care after 20 weeks. Ukraine-Russia conflict. After a one-day Russian ceasefire ended, Kyiv and half of Ukraine were put under air raid alert. Explosions were reported in Mykolaiv. Ukrainian President Zelensky said that Russia broke the Easter truce almost 3,000 times. Russia claimed that Ukraine also violated the ceasefire. Ukraine faced renewed attacks from Russia after a brief Easter truce, with Ukrainian forces reporting approximately 3,000 violations by Moscow. The Russian military acknowledged the end of the ceasefire and the resumption of combat operations. Turning to Lithuania, uncharacteristic warmth swept through the nation, resulting in a record-high temperature of 29 degrees C. This surpasses the previous record for April, which was established 66 years ago. The Vatican mourns the loss of Pope Francis, prompting an outpouring of condolences from leaders worldwide. Russian President Vladimir Putin conveyed his sympathies, acknowledging the Pope's compassion and his dedication to fostering global peace. El Salvador is facing scrutiny as a delegation of U.S. House Democrats, including Yasamin Ansari, Maxine Dexter, Maxwell Frost, and Robert Garcia, visited the country to advocate for the release of Kilma Abrego Garcia, who they believe was wrongly deported. President Nayib Bukele has proposed a prisoner exchange with Venezuela, offering to release 252 Venezuelans deported from the U.S. and imprisoned in El Salvador in return for Venezuelan political prisoners held by President Nicolas Maduro. This proposal has been met with criticism, including appeals from El Salvador's Archbishop, not to transform the country into a big international prison. The ACLU previously intervened to prevent similar deportations, leading to a Supreme Court ruling blocking the Trump administration's plans to deport Venezuelans to Salvadoran prisons. South Korea's former president, Yoon Suk-yeol, is back in court for his criminal trial, following an earlier arrest and subsequent release. In other news, the South Korean Air Force is under scrutiny after an incident involving pilot error led to an aircraft dropping gun pods and fuel tanks, raising concerns about military standards. Economically, South Korea faces challenges due to shrinking exports, signaling potential global repercussions from Trump tariffs. Shifting to social matters, South Korean police are investigating a fatal arson in a 21-story Seoul building, which killed one and injured others. Public anger is also rising over videos depicting women being chased under the pretense of helping them get home safely, criticized for minimizing the fear and panic women face when followed by strangers at night. Israel's internal intelligence chief, Ronan Bar, accused Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of trying to dismiss him for refusing to pledge loyalty and spy on protesters. The Supreme Court blocked this alleged firing. A military report cited failures related to an attack on emergency vehicles in Gaza. Visas for French lawmakers were cancelled amid diplomatic tensions. Airstrikes in Gaza caused 25 deaths, increasing conflict with Hamas. Netanyahu vowed to continue the war. East and Southeast Asia face escalating challenges as transnational organized crime groups extend their multi-billion-dollar cyberscan operations into new territories, including South America and Africa. Despite increased law enforcement efforts across Southeast Asia, these Asian crime syndicates continue to thrive and expand their illicit activities on a global scale. Turning to Malaysia, Chinese electric vehicle manufacturer Zhejiang Leapmotor Technology Company Limited is set to establish a production base for the Southeast Asian market. This initiative will be realized through a collaborative partnership with Stellantis NV, marking a significant step in the expansion of electric vehicle manufacturing in the region. In Switzerland, the Zurich Zoo has celebrated the arrival of a new Asian elephant cow. The zoo actively participates in the European Endangered Species Program, contributing to the conservation of these critically endangered elephants through carefully managed breeding programs. These programs are vital for maintaining genetic diversity and bolstering the population of Asian elephants. Canada's news landscape is seeing significant shifts as Meta's ban on news content has led to a surge in hyperpartisan and misleading information, notably from right-wing Facebook pages such as Canada Proud. This rise in misinformation has become a concern with the upcoming federal election on April 28. This ban was met as reaction to new legislation mandating compensation for news publishers. In related news, a political debate was rescheduled to avoid a conflict with a popular hockey game. India is engaged in delicate trade negotiations with the United States, striving to avert broad tariffs while pursuing a bilateral trade agreement during US Vice President J.D. Vance's visit, where he will meet with Prime Minister Modi for critical discussions. Socially, WhatsApp group chats in India are facing scrutiny for their role in disseminating political misinformation. In Vatican City, 4 of the 6 Indian cardinals eligible to vote will participate in the upcoming conclave to elect the next pope. The late Pope Francis, who died at 88, had considered a papal visit to India, potentially after 2025, but the visit never materialized. Following the passing of Pope Francis, Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, a friend and admirer of his teachings, joined global leaders in expressing condolences, highlighting his commitment to the less fortunate. Before the Pope's death, J.D. Vance journeyed to Italy with his family for discussions with Vatican leaders, including a personal meeting with Pope Francis. Vance, a Catholic, had previously voiced disagreements with the pontiff over immigration policies during the Trump era. Argentina mourns the passing of Pope Francis, born Jorge Mario Bergoglio, in Buenos Aires. As NPR reports, the first pope from the Americas and the first non-European pope in over a millennium leaves behind a complex legacy. Despite his global travels, spanning over 45 countries, he never journeyed back to his homeland. President Javier Milei, once a critic, extended condolences, recognizing their contrasting perspectives. The Vatican is in mourning following the passing of Pope Francis, leaving Cardinal Kevin Farrell, the Vatican Camerlengo, to oversee the Holy See's administration until a successor is elected. Farrell's role as Chamberlain grants him administrative authority during this interregnum, but he is constrained from enacting substantial policy changes. The selection of the next pope is widely anticipated, with several prominent figures emerging as potential candidates, signaling different possible trajectories for the Roman Catholic Church. El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele has suggested a prisoner exchange with Venezuela. He proposed swapping Venezuelan deportees from the U.S. for individuals he deems political prisoners held in Venezuela. Meanwhile, in the United States, the Trump administration is planning significant changes. The U.S. intends to reduce its diplomatic footprint in Africa. Offices within the State Department, focusing on climate change, democracy, and human rights, are slated for elimination. In addition, the U.S. is reportedly hindering global efforts to reform tax laws targeting billionaires and multinational corporations. Peru has recognized Mariluz Kanakiri Murayari, an indigenous Kukama woman, with the 2025 Goldman Prize for her environmental activism. She spearheaded a legal battle that resulted in the Marañón River being granted legal personhood. This designation protects the river from pollution and corporate exploitation. The award celebrates her success in achieving environmental safeguards for the sacred river. Philippines faces renewed tensions with China as the Chinese Navy alleges a Philippine warship illegally entered the waters of the Scarborough Shoal. This incident raises fears of escalating conflicts in the disputed region. Approximately 17,000 troops will participate in joint military exercises, including a combined air and missile defense simulation for the first time. Bhutan is facing scrutiny from human rights organizations due to the deportation of Bhutanese refugees from the United States. The specific case of Ashish, deported after a domestic incident, has drawn attention. Both Bhutan and Nepal have resisted accepting deportees. Meanwhile, in Nepal, political tensions are brewing as roughly 1,500 protesters linked to the Rashtriya Prajatantra Party gathered near the Prime Minister's home. Their demands include reinstating the monarchy and declaring Nepal a Hindu state. The protest led to multiple arrests. Yemen's capital was struck by U.S. airstrikes, resulting in 12 deaths and 30 injuries, according to Houthi rebels. These strikes occurred against a backdrop of escalating tensions involving Iran and Israel. In a separate development, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth shared details of a March attack on Yemen's Iran-aligned Houthis in a signal chat that included his wife, brother, and personal lawyer. This marks at least the second time Hegseth has discussed Yemen strikes in a signal chat with relatives, raising concerns about information security. Germany's grappling with a worrying trend as Berlin sees an uptick in attacks directed towards asylum seekers and refugee accommodations. Authorities have recorded 77 such incidents in 2024 alone. This surge in violence is happening alongside a documented increase in far-right criminal activity. The nation's recently implemented, more stringent migration policies are likely adding to the tension surrounding immigration issues. Syria saw Easter celebrations proceed safely in Damascus, perhaps signaling a new government committed to religious tolerance. The White Helmets, formerly limited to rebel zones, will now operate across all of Syria under the leadership of their founder, who has joined the new government. Airlines globally are bracing for a turbulent period. Analysts predict rising expenses for aircraft parts, alongside a worrying decline in passenger numbers. Turning to Malaysia, the nation stands to potentially benefit from China's suspension of Boeing 737 MAX orders. This could lead to a faster delivery timeline for Malaysia's own orders. However, the country should be prepared for potentially higher costs associated with these aircraft. Meanwhile, Singapore has demonstrated the value of exclusivity in the entertainment sector. Its agreement to be the sole Southeast Asian host for Taylor Swift's mega concerts has underlined the economic benefits of securing such deals. Sudan is facing a dire humanitarian crisis in North Darfur, where widespread displacement is crippling aid efforts. Access to El Fasher and surrounding camps is severely limited, hindering the delivery of essential assistance. Adding to the turmoil, the Rapid Support Forces, RSF, reportedly attacked a city in western Darfur, causing over 30 fatalities, as reported by a Sudanese activist group. Grenada suffered extensive damage from Hurricane Beryl, particularly on Karakou, where over 90% of buildings were damaged or demolished. Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell described the destruction as almost Armageddon-like, intensifying demands for climate action and reparations. Australia. Economist Cody Hochstenbach warns that the coalition's proposed mortgage deduction scheme in Australia could inflate home prices and burden taxpayers, citing the Netherlands as a cautionary example. Benin. Al-Qaeda affiliate Jan claimed responsibility for attacks on 2 military posts in northern Benin, resulting in the deaths of 70 soldiers, marking the deadliest incident claimed by jihadists in the country. China. Qinqiuan Steel, a Thai Chinese company, denied claims that its steel rods failed safety standards after a high-rise building collapsed during an earthquake in Bangkok. In Guinea-Bissau, women protested at a Chinese-run mine, alleging environmental damage to farms and neglected complaints. Dr. Congo. Authorities in the Democratic Republic of Congo have suspended the party of former President Kabila, citing accusations of insurrection and connections to the M23 armed group, causing political instability. Haiti. At least 3 Haitian soldiers were killed in an apparent gang ambush in a town near Port-au-Prince, highlighting the ongoing security challenges in the region. Indonesia. Despite President Prabowo's expressions of partnership, analysts are questioning Indonesia's true commitment to the African continent, raising doubts about future collaboration. Jamaica. In Kingston, Jamaica, Max Romeo's career mirrored the evolution of reggae, from novelty music to a genre with political messages and enduring cultural impact. Kenya. President William Ruto of Kenya praised Pope Francis for his servant leadership, emphasizing his humility, inclusivity, commitment to justice, and compassion for the poor and vulnerable. Nigeria. A tour called The Herds in Nigeria's Floating Slum underscores the tangible and devastating effects of climate change on vulnerable communities. Saudi Arabia. McLaren's Oscar Piastri won the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, overtaking Red Bull's pole sitter Max Verstappen and leading the World Championship standings for the first time in his career. Singapore. Deputy Prime Minister Gan Kim Yong of Singapore stated that the Special Economic Zone, SEZ, creates opportunities for businesses to strengthen supply chains and thrive amid global trade uncertainty. South Africa. A Pentecostal church in South Africa held mass wedding ceremonies for approximately 3,000 individuals, with many participants entering into polygamous marriages, reflecting diverse cultural practices. Sri Lanka. The Vatican has recognized 167 victims of IS-inspired bombings in Sri Lanka, as witnesses of faith, acknowledging the attacks that targeted Christian, Buddhist, Hindu, and Islamic religious figures. Zion, skiers at the Skistar resort in Sälen, Sweden, reported poor snow conditions, encountering mud and slush on the slopes, leading some customers to request refunds due to unsatisfactory experiences. Thailand. Shin Keyuan Steel, a Thai-Chinese company, refuted claims that its steel rods failed safety standards after a high-rise building under construction collapsed during an earthquake in Bangkok last month. The Vatican Catholic Church. Pope Francis has aimed to make the Church more welcoming, global, and collaborative, contrasting with the more doctrinaire and traditional approaches of some of his predecessors. Potential successors to Pope Francis include Peter Turkson of Ghana, Luis Tagle of the Philippines, and Peter Erdo of Hungary, each representing different perspectives and regions within the Catholic Church. Kevin Farrell is the Camerlengo, serving as the acting head of the Vatican until a new pope is elected. Pope Francis was known for his ability to make emotional connections and his focus on being a pastor to wounded souls, emphasizing compassion and understanding. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.